Oh, hi. I hope your dance card isn't filled because Cris Franco will be exploring the ever-widening cultural chasm between American-born and immigrant Latinos as we fall into the assimilation gap on the next Café California. Into the cultural gap. The cultural gap, it's like Kid Gap or Baby Gap, except the Latinos on one side of this gap can't afford to shop at the Gap. Let's meet our Gap guests right now. First, we've got Nelly Paredes-Washborn. Did I say it right?
Yes, you say it right.
One for me. She is a PhD and communications consultant, and you can tell that she's been in the United States because she substituted her de la for punctuation, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Nelly believes that the gap is closing between Mexican and Mexican-American lifestyles, and a closing gap is a good gap. Welcome, Nelly Paredes-Washborn. We've got Libertad Ayala. She is the youth coordinator for El Partido La Raza Unida. Her family has been in this country for 7 generations, and she currently lives in Pacoima, which is like not leaving Mexico at all.
Exactly.
Ms. Ayala identifies not with Spain, but rather chooses to acknowledge her indigenous roots. She claims that even with our differences, we're still all brothers and sisters. Kumbaya.
Thank you.
And welcome, Libertad Ayala.
Thank you.
We've got Roberto Orsi. He is a top expert on Hispanic marketing. In fact, his appearance here today is underwritten in part by Coors, the Coors Light. Mr. Orsi is the president of La Agencia de Orsi y Asociados and maintains that Latinos are not a homogeneous group, because if they were, he could market them much easier. Welcome, Roberto Orsi. It's wonderful to finally meet you. Ernie G is a hip, young, multi-talented comedian. At 27, he's one of the youngest Hispanics to reach that age. Mr. G has 2 comedy records and no police record, and I've got one of them right here. This is his CD, right? And you've appeared in every show with the word Latino in it.
Absolutely, every show,
comedy,
every Hispanic, Latino, Mexican, Pocho,
the
Cholo.
Chicano Chuckle Hut, the Ha Ha Hacienda.
Everything.
He's done them all. Ernie is brown and proud, and he states that Pochos are the ones with the real power in this country. Welcome, my friend and fellow comedian, Ernie G. Finally. Okay, you guys, the topic is that whatever you call them, us, Mexican-Americans, Prepsicans, Generación Eña, Chicanos, or the formerly derogatory term Pochos, American-born Latinos different from their immigrant parents in more than just place of birth, dominant language, and potential yearly income. With the emergence of Hispanos, immigrants and Pochos are interfacing more than ever. And in doing so, both groups are celebrating their similarities and pondering their vast differences. We're going to be start pondering with these questions. Guys, so what is the best term? Do you think, is Pocho an insult still? There's Pocho magazine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No,
I don't find it as an insult at all. I mean, it just reaffirms that Chicanismo that I'm so much proud of.
Because in old world Mexico, Pocho was a put down.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was a put down of some time, but I think it's mostly that it has some humor on it. Because when you call Pocho to somebody, ha ha ha, and then you laugh, and that's it. That's what in Mexico is about.
So you thought, no, but you don't think it was ever an insult?
Never
Mexico?
an insult.
Así que tenía su sentido de humor.
Never an insult, like gringo is not an insult for us in Mexico either. A pocho is not an insult, as a matter of fact, for us to call somebody a pocho, that means half gringo and half Mexicano.
Okay, Mr.
You know,
Orsi,
Chris,
but
in the case of how you call yourself, it's really how you identify yourself. In our culture, there are at least 8 ways to say turkey in Spanish.
Okay, what are they?
Because we're so diverse. Pollo, pavo, huipil, and I won't bore you, but there's many ways. If you're Hispanic, you may look at it from a marketing perspective. If you feel Latino, you call yourself Latino or Latin. If you feel a little bit more Mexican, you're Mexican-American or Mexicano. If you feel California or more politically active, you might say, I'm Chicano. It just, what matters is how you feel about yourself, and neither is right.
Yeah,
Pocho's
exactly.
fine
Ernie,
too.
you go on stage and you say you're a Pocho sometimes, right?
Well,
is the audience on board with you?
I get called Pocho all the time, especially when I go to
on
Mexico.
the street, right?
Well, when I go to Mexico and I try and speak Spanish, and they instantly go, "Oh, this guy's not from here.
He's a mega
one of those
pocho.
He thinks he's Mexicano, but he's really American first."
Pocho plus.
I go to Mexico to find my cultural roots, and these people were like, "We don't know you. Get back over there, white boy." And then I come here, and then my friends are like, "Dude, you're like a cholo, dude. You're like a wetter. You're like a Mexican. Go back to Mexico." And I'm like, "Bro, where do I live? I live here. I'm not really Mexican or American, and I'm not sure how I fit." But pocho to me now is something that I am with pride. I'm a pocho with pride because all my
Pocho
friends
pride.
are pochos.
We got to be proud about it.
Exactly.
You know?
All my friends are pochos. If you're Mexican and you were born in Mexico but you live here now, you're a pocho. Go to Mexico and find out how much.
Well,
of a
you know,
pocho
my
you are.
parents said, no, you're Mexico-Americano, if anything. In fact, my parents wanted us to stay Mexicanos because I had lived in Mexico. And they said, no, di que eres Mexicano, because they didn't want that stigma attached to it. I want to talk to you a little bit about what's happening. My sisters teach in grammar schools, elementary schools, and they say that the kids split themselves up. The English language Latino kids go with the English language kids, and the Spanish language kids go with the Spanish language kids, and that's where some of the problems come, divisions in language. Let's talk a little bit about the language. So you don't speak Spanish?
I speak Spanish fine.
How good?
To me.
I'm the pocho leader.
I can order some tacos at a taco truck, you know, like those tacos de carne asada, and as soon as they throw in cebolla, cilantro, y rábano, I'm like, oh, shoot.
Numero cuatro.
Yeah,
Silver play.
You know, if you were to think about it as only a language issue, you may be missing some key points, because one of the things about Hispanic culture, it's diverse, it's vibrant, it's growing, and we have a lot of things feeding it.
It's alive.
Exactly, it is. When I was young, I was raised in California, and then I went to Mexico as an adult, and they said, I was growing up there, and they said, you remind me of my parents the way you are, because I was stuck in a Mexican of the 1950s. And we changed so much that if you think only language, you'll forget that you have to address issues like, is it an education issue? Is it an economic issue? Do we need more mentoring? So you just make it a language issue rather than looking for solutions to whatever the specific thing that's making that gap.
Yeah,
which I don't even know if it exists.
Yeah, and in grammar schools, I don't think it's just necessarily that language issue. I think that a lot of kids separate between the kids that are newcomers or the ones that just came because it's that internal hatred. I think a lot of kids, and I've told this I work at a continuation school where we get kids that are expulsed from elementary to high school for drug and weapon possession. And I tell them, the reason that you hate Jaime, you know, because you have kids that call themselves Tony.
Sounds like a sitcom.